Live from KTUL Tulsa, you're watching Good Day Tulsa.
And our celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, will join us this morning to talk to us about the history of Greenwood and Black Wall Street. Our celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, will join us after the break to share history about Greenwood and Martin Luther King Jr.
Our good friend, historian Raffi Andonian, is here to talk with us today about the history of Greenwood and of Martin Luther King Jr.
Raffi, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. And remember, speaking of MLK, yesterday, January 15th, would have been his 94th birthday if he was alive.
94.
Younger than my grandma, actually.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I guess so. I guess it has been. Yeah, 94?
Yeah.
I read that somewhere that he has one living sister, I think, that's left, that's still kind of trying to continue his legacy.
Yeah, really fascinating. It reminds you that, it wasn't long ago.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, recent history. And now, speaking of history, especially local history, we hear of Black Wall Street at Greenwood. How did African Americans get that going?
Yeah, so what's interesting about Black Wall Street, of course, is that, there was an era, we're talking from the early 1900s to the early 1920s, where you have a very wealthy black neighborhood right here in Tulsa. And the reason for that is because you're in the era of Jim Crow segregation. And in segregation, while, of course, you had black people unable to access the social mobility of broader society, the flip side was they had to create a self-sufficient community. And when doing that, what happened as a result was the dollar stayed in the community. So the average dollar would stay, depends on the measurement you look, between 35 to 100 times circulating within the Greenwood neighborhood in this case, which was established in 1906, prior to Oklahoma becoming a state.
Oh.
And in that process, what happened is there was a wealthy black business person from Arkansas that came here and started to sell only to other black property holders. And it became so wealthy that you had 6 black families that owned private planes by the time of the Greenwood riots.
Oh my goodness. This is a little side of history that you don't usually hear about. Well, this morning, one of the things we talked about with the MLK Day Parade is the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. visited Tulsa at one point. What brought him to town?
Well, it was precisely the fact that, Black Wall Street now at that time had been erased, right? Because you have the riots that took place in 1921. MLK is coming here in 1960. So the riots took place before MLK was even born. But he came here for 2 reasons. One, there was the local Black Voters League and a local church that invited him to come here, in part because of the symbolism of Greenwood. He came to a church that was just north of Greenwood. And of course, I brought here for MLK Day, to commemorate his visit here in Tulsa, the medal that was given to him posthumously by Congress, which is a replication, there's a bronze replica by the U.S. Mint of the gold medal that was given by Congress to MLK and his wife, MLK and Coretta Scott King, right there on there, which I thought was valuable for MLK.
Absolutely.
Remembering his visit here to Tulsa to commemorate that. Remember, the reason that the Black Wall Street mattered so much in black memory, including when MLK came here, is because of the fact that having that wealthy black neighborhood in that era really represented that black entrepreneurs and the neighborhood were also capable of building that sort of society.
Okay, so I know that we talked about this a lot when we hit the 100-year mark. What exactly triggered that riot that started down there that ended with so many people losing their lives?
You have a black man and a white woman in an elevator at one point. And there's different stories of what happened there, but it was not uncommon at the time for when things got inflammatory to accuse a black man of raping a white woman. And that made it in the newspaper. And when it went in the newspaper, it was a very inflammatory column, and that did not sit well with a variety of people. There was basically no awaiting for the trial. So what happened was you have a white mob and a black mob, both armed, that confront each other at a courthouse. But that starts to dissipate, and once that dissipates, the white mob continues on into Greenwood and destroys 35 city blocks. 9,000 people are homeless, 300 people get killed, so it really wipes out the neighborhood. There's even accounts of kerosene being poured so you can kind of, make sure the flames are really big. And so as a result, that you have this sort of payback, if you will, especially in a wealthy neighborhood like that, because it's to put, in that era's terminology, put the black folks back in their place, the social order, because it was some resentment of so much black success in that Jim Crow period, right? And there's also these notions that all they're doing over there is drinking, having drugs, playing with guns, so they kind of deserve it, quote unquote, in their eyes. So that's what they use that as an excuse to do that. It was so rough that one of the local newspapers actually says, we should turn to the KKK to restore social order.
Oh my goodness.
That's the kind of impact just from that accusation.
This is why history is important, because if you don't know what happened, then you can't prevent it from happening again. That's why teaching history is such an important thing. I wish we had more time to spend with you today. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but if you would like more information on celebrity historian Raffi Andonian, boy, you got a lot of good knowledge in there. celebrityhistorian.com.